Well, over the history of this podcast, we've spoken a lot about various strategies and skills that are necessary to be successful in our journey away from porn and towards a better life. Today, I want to tell you what I think is the number one most important recovery skill of all. But you'll need to wait for it. Welcome aboard.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, I promised you the tease as to what that recovery skill would be. So here it is. The number one most important porn recovery skill is a good night's sleep. What? What does that have to do with porn? And why do I think it's that important? Well, let me give you a bit of background here. One of the things I've noticed in coaching guys is we always start in our groups. We do a check-in. We walk through feelings, active commitment, sobriety, challenges and opportunities. And of course, in feelings, one of the things I've noticed that guys often say when I ask them how they're doing or feeling is, I'm really tired. Now, first of all, I don't think that's probably a feeling, but I let them get away with it. And but what I don't let them get away with is, because I ask them questions, well, why is it you're tired? Now, if you, for example, are the parent of a brand new baby, you get a pass here, right? Your baby's up in the middle of the night. Okay, so you get a papal dispensation to be tired. But for the rest of us, I don't let them off the hook. I say, well, tell me why you're tired. And usually what happens is, we end up talking about how they're taking care of their bodies. It's one of the things we do in active commitments. We talk about the physical realm, and we get into things like sleep, diet, exercise, those kind of things. So when guys say to me, man, I'm just always tired, or I'm really tired, I'll ask them questions like, so how many hours a night do you sleep on average? What time do you usually go to bed? What time do you usually get up? Now, it's not that people are tired necessarily because they're up half the night watching porn. It could be that, but not necessarily. And I quote Matt Dobschutz from Porn Free Radio, one of the guys I coach with. He said one of the most important boundaries and successful things he introduced in his life, kind of his top 10, number one was never going to bed without his wife. So never having his wife go to bed and then him staying up later. That just was always a recipe for trouble. So anyways, let me just say that. But this idea of sleep is a big deal. Now I'm going to make a comment that's going to make me sound like an old fart. But I am noticing that this seems, you would think that older people would be a lot more tired, right? but it's not the case. Let's just say 35, over 35, under 35. I am noticing that being tired is a much bigger deal for younger guys. It almost, people have learned coming out of their teenage years and into their 20s. I don't know. It almost feels like it wasn't cool to get a good night's sleep. It wasn't cool to go to bed early. Again, maybe that's not right or fair, but I would say this. If you experience tiredness, physical tiredness on a regular basis, it's because you're not making good, practical choices. They say, well, how does that affect my recovery or my success there? Well, it's in a number of ways. First of all, if you're tired, you're less likely to be clear and alert in your thinking, which is never a good sign for recovery. If you're tired, you're less likely to practice good self-awareness, which is another skill which is absolutely crucial for recovery. There's a great saying, I don't think it's a recovery saying, but it's a great saying that fatigue makes cowards of us all. Right? We get tired, we don't have the same resources to fend off attacks, so to speak. Here's an interesting thing that I looked up. By the way, do you know, for example, when the most common time it is for people to look at porn? The most common time, the most highest use of porn viewing is between the hours, wait for it, of 10 p.m. and midnight. Now, let me ask you a question. What should most people be doing between 10 p.m. and midnight? Well, they should either be winding down or they should already be in bed. Instead, we're just winding ourselves up. So, I am convinced that teaching guys to get a good night's sleep is one of the very most important preconditions to having a good recovery. So, let me give you just a few common suggestions that I think would be of help. Here's the first one. As much as is possible, keep the same schedule 7 days a week. Why? Because your body gets used to it. Your body gets used to going to bed at a set time. Your body gets used to getting up at a set time. Think about it. You've all had the experience where you get up pretty close to the same time to go to work, and then you have a week or two of holidays. And what happens at the beginning of that time? You end up waking up at the same time as you normally would to go to work. Why? Because your body has got used to it. But there's one way to throw off that circadian rhythm, and that is on the weekend to stay up much later than you normally do. Guess what happens when you do that? Friday night, Saturday night, whatever, and you're up really, really late. Your body gets confused as to when to go to bed and when to get up. You know, I've even noticed, that if I stay up a half an hour later than I normally do, I feel it the next day. So now, again, you're saying, come on, Vern, you're saying that, never go out late at night on the week. No, I'm not saying that. Everything's in moderation here, but I'm trying to tell you, when you do that, there will be a cost to it. We sometimes drive in an hour and a half, go to a concert or a game in the big city. By the time you get back, it's close to midnight. I don't do that very often. When I do, I pay for it, but I'm making that as a conscious choice. But by and large, as much as possible, I want to keep the same rhythm 7 days a week. Oh, by the way, do you know what the most common day that people watch porn on? We already talked about it being between the hours of 10 p.m. and midnight. The most common day for people to watch porn is Sunday evening. That'd be interesting. Could it be that we're tired from the weekend? I'm just asking the questions, as they say. There we go. All right. So that's the first one. Regular schedule. Number 2, practice a wind down ritual. There's this thing called the Amish hour. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And that's, of course, the Amish I don't think they have electricity, and everything runs, that's why they call it the Amish hour. So if you don't have electricity, you can't be on electronic devices by and large. The whole idea of the Amish hour is in the previous hour before you go to bed is stay off any stimulating screens for that last hour, read a book or do something different. Now I've noticed, for example, if I'm reading a book, I can fall asleep really easily. So obviously that's not stimulating my brain. I can even fall asleep watching TV. So I'm going to make TV as a bit of a contested thing here, because both me and my wife can fall asleep watching TV. We take turns trying to keep each other awake for that last half an hour. So TV doesn't keep me awake. But this is what I've noticed. Whenever I'm playing video games, for example, I can play video games much later than when I would normally fall asleep. I can stay up and play them because I've noticed that it just keeps my brain from shutting down or slowing down. Right? I've just noticed that it's just something that's really clear to me. So I don't play video games, the last thing before I'm trying to go to bed at night. For many people, they almost have to get to a point where they need to leave their electronic devices like their phone in another room. It's like a necessary first step for them in recovery. Why? Because they get so used to reaching for it, or they get into bed and they're scrolling through social media or whatever, which can be a problem in itself. But what happens is they're stimulating their brain. Or even worse, they can't fall asleep, or they wake up a few hours into sleep and they reach for their phone. There's actually a thing, it's a new invention. It's not a phone. You can actually go to Walmart and buy something called an alarm clock. It's a brand new thing, I've heard, and it doesn't have anything to do with a phone. There is actually that thing out there. I've had one guy say, well, what am I going to do if somebody calls, one of my kids call an emergency in the middle of the night? I'm going, well, where there's a will, there's a way. Leave your phone in the kitchen on the counter and put a baby monitor next. I don't know, but the bottom line is whatever it takes for you to get to slow your brain down is necessary. So that's the second one. Number 3, introduce physical exercise into your life. Just a couple quick searches here. Johns Hopkins University, the Center for Sleep. We have solid evidence that exercise does, in fact, help you fall asleep more quickly and improves sleep quality. Now, that's not exercise just before you go to bed, but exercise sometime throughout the day. And they say in terms of timing, exercise won't impact your sleep if you complete it an hour before bedtime. Well, you say, well, I've got insomnia. They've even said, and I know insomnia is a real thing, but studies have shown that long-term exercise ranging from periods of 4 to 24 weeks enable individuals with insomnia to fall asleep faster and experience deeper sleep. So exercise is an important thing. Number 4, make sure your room is dark and cool. I hate trying to sleep when it's too hot. Better cool than too warm. Bring in a portable air conditioner, or probably the best thing we ever did in our entire life. We spent the money for our house and got a heat pump that puts air conditioning through our central air conditioning. My wife said it was the single best investment we ever made in our life. When we first moved into our house, we had these neighbors from hell. They were always up late drinking, singing, screaming, fighting. It was the worst. It went on for about 2 years. And then they were renters. They eventually moved out. They got kicked out. And then some people came and bought the house, and it was the best thing that ever happened. So what we did is we bought an air conditioner, stuck it in our window, and it created white noise. We have it on even in the middle of the wintertime. Now, we would just put the fan on, and it was loud enough that when that thing was on, we couldn't hear the neighbors. We just needed to do that to reduce any sort of external noise or distractions. So, number 4, make sure your room is conducive to sleep. Number 5, don't go to bed hungry or stuffed, and avoid stimulants like coffee after a certain time in the day. For me, it was 3 o'clock. That was until I cut out my afternoon coffee altogether. That's from my last podcast. Talking about sleep, here's an interesting rule I heard. It was called the 10-3-2-1 rule. So here's an interesting one. 10 hours before bed, no more coffee, no more caffeine. So that could be more than just, that could be Red Bull. That could be certain types of pop. That could be, So if you go to bed at 11 o'clock, let's say, that would be after 1 o'clock. If it go to bed at 10, it would be noon. So 10 hours before bed, no more caffeine. 3 hours before bed, no more food or alcohol. 2 hours before bed, no more work. And 1 hour before bed, no more screen time. So that was a 10, 3, 2, 1 rule. And the last thing I would say just is if you, there could be medical issues involved around sleep. Perhaps you have sleep apnea. My wife says I snore, and it's becoming a challenge. And I've had people say that I need to get tested for sleep apnea, which is one of the, apparently it makes you live shorter too, cuts down your lifespan. So that's one of the next things I'm going to be looking at just physically. But anyways, all of those things are crucial. So I really do think the number one, before you get going on anything, the physical realm is really important. We are holistic people. If we're not getting a good night's sleep, we're tired. And when we're tired, we end up showing poor judgment. We end up in our fatigue, not standing up to the things we need to. We end up not being alert. So anyways, there you go. Last week we talked about sugar. This week we talked about sleep. Where are we going on this podcast, you may be asking. But I don't know. There's just some ideas. I'd love you to think about them. If you're in a group, throw them out, process them with some of your buddies, and love to hear what you think. My email is bandofbrothers.care, that's .care, @gmail.com. Again, love to hear from guys. I love to, I'm coaching guys all the time, putting guys in groups. We work through the traction course, the 52-week video course that I've developed, which is part of the cost of being in one of the groups. So if you want to hear more, you can email me, or you can just go on the website, bandofbrothers.care, look up traction courses, and you can find out some of the things that I offer. So next time, stay green, choose life, and we'll see you next time. Take care.